we are at the wonderful UCI School of Law, and I'm privileged to be with the dean at that school, Erwin Chemerinsky. Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
Great to talk with you.
You know, the accolades that have been bestowed on this program that you founded here not too long ago has been just tremendous.
Thank you.
You know, I read where years ago they were thinking about putting a law school here, and some people were going, well, why do we need another law school? But the key was, no, they need a really great law school, and they got you, right?
Well, thank you.
So all these years, it has been a tremendous success. You've had a great track record with the graduates and clerkships and all. Tell me the importance of this law school here, and here especially in Orange County.
I think one of the most important things is that we provide service to the people of Orange County.
Mm-hmm.
We require every student to participate in a clinic while in law school, where the students represent real clients under supervision of a faculty member. So we have a community economic development clinic that represents small businesses in Orange County. We have a domestic violence clinic that represents women who are victims of family violence. We have a criminal defense clinic that represents misdemeanor criminal defendants here in Orange County. And I can go on, obviously, with other examples. So we're providing legal services for those who otherwise wouldn't have it. Every first-year student has to go to a public defender office or a legal service office and do intake interviews to help out in that way. In addition to this, the statistic I may be most proud of is that our students who graduated this past May, 92% did pro bono work while in law school. That's in addition to their clinics, and it's in addition to their courses. That's providing volunteer legal services for people who need them. Also, we create so many programs that the community can be part of. Every year we do a Supreme Court review program. We had 850 people come this year. We have lectures all through the year that the community is involved in. So I hope that having the law school here, we're really enriching Orange County and Southern California.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly are. I think that's absolutely wonderful, that all the pro bono work that has been done. And I think that's something that, judging by your reputation, what I've read about, you really instill, don't you?
We, from the beginning, have made public service a key commitment of the law school. It's reflected in the pro bono work. It's reflected in that of all the law schools in the country, we were number 2 in placing our students after graduation at government and public service jobs. Certainly we have students who go to all of the big firms, but I'm very proud that students who come here while in law school do public service work, and when they graduate do that. Just to give you an example, there's a program called Gideon's Promise, where if the law school pays for a student after graduation to work in a public defender's office for a year, they then guarantee at their expense the student a job for the next 2 years as a public defender.
Wow.
We placed more students in the Gideon's Promise program than any other law school in the country. Almost 20% of all the graduates in the country doing Gideon's Promise are from this law school.
You know, that's a fantastic program because, in fact, I was just listening to one of those This American Life podcasts, and they were talking about that one of the segments, the shortage of public defenders. And so this is absolutely fantastic. Now, as far as that, can they be public defenders outside of Orange County as well?
The 3 who we have who graduated this past May, one is in Texas, one is in Louisiana, and one is in Tennessee.
That is fantastic. It's funny, that broadcast I told you about was about a city somewhere in Louisiana back there, and they couldn't find a public defender. That's great. Let's talk about the Supreme Court. And coming up, as you always do, we'll be doing a talk in Laguna Woods on the 14th. And you kind of give a review of the Supreme Court, maybe where it's going. Of course, this year, that may be a little bit up in the air. But talk about some of the key things that have happened in the past several months, in the past year.
Well, the most important thing that's happened in the last year was on Saturday, February 13th, Antonin Scalia died.
Yes.
That means that the court, from February 13th till the end of the term, and for the coming term, we'll have 8 justices. And that really defines everything. It means there's a chance that in a significant number of cases, the justices will be deadlocked 4-4.
And that's already happened, hasn't it?
It's happened a number of times. In some of the most high-profile cases last year, the justices split 4-4. There was a challenge to President Obama's immigration action, deferred action of parents of Americans. The just split 4-4. There's a case about whether earlier decisions should be overruled that say that non-union members are required to pay the share of the dues that go to support collective bargaining.
Sure.
Court split 4-4. In fact, the court just recently split 4-4 with regard to a North Carolina law imposing restrictions on voting. North Carolina adopted one of the most restrictive laws in the country with regard to who can vote. The Federal Court of Appeals said it operated with the most surgical precision to keep African Americans from voting. And the Supreme Court 4-4 split on whether to overturn that and keep the North Carolina law in effect.
When there is a split like that, can it be returned to the Supreme Court at a later date? Or is it just kind of held whatever the lower court decisions were?
When the Supreme Court splits 4-4, the lower court decision stands. It's technically called the lower court decision affirmed without opinion by an evenly divided court.
Okay.
The Supreme Court can certainly take up the issue again in the future in another case.
Okay.
But it's always been that this particular case is forever decided.
Okay. Obviously, split decisions aren't good. Now, one can argue which side you would rather have in there, a more conservative and more liberal, but it seems to me that the worst option is having split decisions. You want some decision one way or other. Obviously, that hangs in the balance depending not only who gets elected to the presidency, but also the makeup of Congress and the Senate, right?
There's no doubt. The president appoints, but the Senate has to confirm the nomination. We've seen that with Chief Judge Merrick Garland. The president nominated him, but the Senate made clear there would be no hearings and no vote, so we still go without a ninth justice on the court. When we talk about what will happen after January, it's key to remember it's about the president and it's about the composition of the Senate.
Right.
If the president and the senator are of the same political party, the president can have whoever he or she wants on the Supreme Court.
Right.
So when the president and the senator of different political parties, so in those circumstances, you have confirmation fights.
Right, exactly, which of course we have seen for quite a while now, no matter, it's obviously the last two presidencies as far as the different parties that were in the makeup is almost opposite within the Senate and Congress. And that brings up the point of whoever becomes president, especially if they have a Congress or Senate that is opposite of their party, is trying to bring together everyone that they can find someone to fill that slot that really kind of sees the sides of both. Am I correct?
If the president and the senator are of the same political party, the president can have whoever she wants on the court. There's no need to have to please the minority party.
Right.
So President George W. Bush had a Republican Senate. He could nominate someone very conservative, Samuel Alito. When Barack Obama had a Democratic Senate, he could appoint somebody quite liberal, Sonia Sotomayor. It's when the president and the senator of different political parties that everything changes. So it was that when Ronald Reagan nominated Robert Bork for the Supreme Court, you had a Republican president and a Democratic Senate, and they wouldn't confirm him. Right now we have a Democratic Senate, a Democratic president and a Republican Senate, and we've seen that Merrick Garland can't get through.
Yeah, and of course nowadays the parties are far more extreme or on opposite sides than they used to be, so I can see the difficulty there. Anyone you foresee that, I guess it certainly depends, the makeup of the political process as we get into January, but are there any certain folks that maybe you would like to see there? I mean,
I have my
you have
ideal
yours.
list. If the president were to call me, I could say, these are the people I think you should pick. I don't expect the president to be calling me for recommendations. One of the things really important to emphasize is that since 1960, 78 years old is the average age at which a Supreme Court justice has left the bench. Antonin Scalia was 79 when he left the bench. When the next president is inaugurated on January 20th, 2017, there will be 3 justices 78 or older. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is 83, Anthony Kennedy is 80, Stephen Breyer is 78. Plus there's the Scalia vacancy. So the next president, especially if he serves for 2 terms, is likely to have 3 or 4 seats to fill on the Supreme Court. Yeah,
so a huge responsibility coming up. Let me ask you on that when it come to ages and things like that. Sometimes there's talk that maybe there should be an age limit for the Supreme Court, or maybe even a term limit, whatever that may be, 8, 12, 15 years. What's your take on that?
I favor term limits. I would favor 18-year non-renewable terms for the Supreme
Okay.
Court. Some of it is that life expectancy is a lot longer now than
Yes,
it
it
was
is.
in 1787. Thankfully.
Yeah.
Clarence Thomas was 43 when he was confirmed for the court in 1991. If he serves until he's 90, the age at which Justice Stevens retired, he'll be on the Supreme Court for 47 years. So this doesn't sound ideological.
Yeah.
Elena Kagan and John Roberts were each 50 when they were confirmed. If they served till they're 90, that's 40 years. That's too much power in one person's hands
Right.
for too long a period of time. Also, too much depends on the accident of history. Richard Nixon got 4 seats to fill in the Supreme Court in his first 2 years as president.
Right.
Jimmy Carter had no seats to fill in his 4 years as president.
Yeah, I think that you brought up a very good point there. It's almost like the luck of the age or the luck of the draw sometimes, in having some sort of term limits gives that turnover, that opportunity, and I think that's a very important point. So talk coming up on the 14th, you're going to be going over mainly the Supreme Court and some of the decisions that were made and looking towards whatever the future may bring, right?
Exactly. Last term had a number of major rulings. The Supreme Court struck down a Texas law restricting access to abortion. The court upheld a Texas policy at the University of Texas allowing affirmative action. So there's really important cases to discuss. And then on the docket for this coming term, some important cases about church and state and civil rights.
All right, Dean, it has been an absolute
My
pleasure.
pleasure. Thank you.